It's the spoopy season, and we here at TCP can't think of a better series to cover around this time than the Resident Evil games. Well, there's about 3 or 4 more choices, but RE is unquestionably the most optimal choice for maximum old school gaming spook. Is that racist? Since its release way back in 1996, Resident Evil has been a juggernaut in the gaming space, which kinda allowed it to retroactively lay claim to kickstarting the whole survival horror genre. Whether said claim is actually true or not can obviously be debated, although it's very clearly not true, with earlier games such as 1992's Alone in the Dark, and going even further back, 1989's Sweet Home, also developed by Capcom, considered its predecessor. But the term survival horror wasn't coined until it was used for the marketing for Resident Evil. Like most people in our age range with the original PlayStation, we were kids when the first game in the series came out, watching our 2 older brothers make their way through the game for the first time. My memory is a little hazy, but I recall being scared of Yawn the giant snake, and of course Tyrant the final boss. I actually do remember running out of the room when he broke through his little containment tube thing. My initial fear of 3D models and the cringy nature of PS1 graphics that we all thought couldn't get better than this, definitely not helping the situation. A couple of years later, my brother and I actually got to try Resident Evil on our own with the second game, and during that time we weren't paying attention to any story beats or character arcs. We were just trying to endure the world of survival horror. Of course, as we grew with age, a combination of our multiple playthroughs and playing other horror games ultimately desensitized us to the scares and opened up the larger narrative of outbreaks, evil corporations, and the herb-chewing group of heroes that survived and wanted to expose the truth by blowing up every underground lab and rocket launching one experimental super weapon at a time. And we loved it. Although we still had a lot of love for the series, it immediately started to lose the plot with the 4th mainline game, and completely jumped the shark by the time the 6th one rolled by. They're good games, yes, admittedly even 6, but the story we grew to love turned into such a mess. Don't even get me started on whatever the fuck they're doing with the series today. It's been all first-person modes, questionable remakes, mold people, and I wanna say superstition brought to life through super science sense. Whatever. We're not here to talk about all that mess. At least not yet. Nope. We'd rather talk about what a lot of people would call the series' narrative peak, at a time where it was at its simplest. The story of how, thanks to an incidental outbreak and the horrible company's need to take advantage of the situation, caused 8 nights filled of countless death, horror, suffering, and cover-ups, until the city was quite literally nuked from the map. This is Team Crossbody, and this is the original Resident Evil Raccoon City trilogy.
On the night of July 24th, 1998, the Special Tactics and Rescue Services, or STARS for short, was assigned to the Arklay Mountains to investigate a series of cannibalistic homicides carried out by an unidentified group of people. Now, the STARS team is a fairly large special forces unit, mostly made up of ex-military and scientists, and the night before, the units was split into 2 squads, Bravo and Alpha. Bravo got deployed first, but since then, they've been completely radio silent. But we don't really care about those guys. What's more important is that their screw up prompt our guys, Alpha Team, to helicopter in. Their job is to not only finish Bravo's mission, but to also figure out what happened to them and hopefully bring them home. While on our way to the mission area, the team locates the downed helicopter of Bravo Team. In the middle of their investigation, this guy, Joseph, gets attacked and torn apart by a pack of raptors that, upon closer inspection, they turn out to be dogs. Damn, that's significantly more lame. They should have been dinosaurs, just saying. Anyway, the remaining team members are able to defend themselves, but Joseph can't be saved. In the commotion, their pilot, local piss bitch Brad Vickers, takes off, shredding the remaining 4 members of Alpha Team behind. Before Vicky even start talking about how much he sucks, they're chased off by several more dogs, and is forced to take refuge in a large mansion nearby. I take the time to introduce all the core players to the plot, but the game already does that in glorious fashion, so I'll just let it do the talking.
Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Barry Burton, Rebecca Chambers,
Enrico Marini,
Albert Wesker, Resident Evil.
Okay, so let's talk about it. The infamous live action intro to Resident Evil, the B-movie production, the costumes that honestly had some budget put behind them, and the kind of acting that makes you wonder if Capcom literally just grabbed the mixture of theater kids and interns and told them to look scared of the park at night somewhere. It's iconic. No, not because it's good at anything. It's iconic because it's so bad. It kind of loops around to its own greatness. From the start, it feels like some VHS homemade horror movie you find at a garage sale. Cheesy narration, awkward freeze-frame character intros, and a fog machine working overtime. And Joseph barely gets his name out before he's killed. It's laughable, but it's also perfect in a couple of areas like, yeah, it's corny, but it's also eerie and surreal in a way that works to his favor. And honestly, this intro is this serious in a nutshell. And to be fair, mostly growing up with Adult Swim kind of killed my ability to dislike something like this. It's the kind of cringe that sticks with you, not because it's polished, because it's memorable. I think a lot of this works. If anything, I think it should have stayed the tone of Resident Evil as a whole, a mixture of B-movie schlock and genuine atmosphere. Because let's be real, there's a couple of tiny scenes here that was essentially horror farming long before that was a thing. Instead, the series eventually took itself way too seriously, piling on conspiracies, bioweapon drama until it started to buckle under the weight of its own lore. To be fair again, the cheesy attitude is still sprinkled here and there with the newer stuff, but that intro, that's the purest distillation of what Resident Evil should have been. It's beyond ridiculous, and that's why we still talk about it nearly 30 years later. And that's why I'll die on the hill that camping intro is peak Resident Evil.
The following events take place between July 24th and 25th, 1998. Due to conflicting accounts of what actually happened, the true events are left ambiguous at best, although just as unreliable, but for the sake of narrative convenience. Here's TCB's retelling of the Spencer Mansion incident, told in its totality.
So Chris somehow got ahead of his team and entered the mansion by himself. Ignore the fact that he was the one who told Joe and the others to go in first. That just creates plot holes, right? We don't want that. Once inside, Chris immediately starts touching everything, picking up wall-mounted shields and keys, throwing statues in the dining rooms because he saw one was holding the gem. Well, it was only a matter of time before you start noticing these things are all connected. Certain doors in his mansion take specifically designed keys, gems fit into random tiger buses that reveal conveniently placed metal crests, real haunted mansion type stuff. While exploring, Chris eventually discovers he isn't alone. He runs into a woman named Rebecca Chambers, who immediately sprays him with something. What even is that stuff? It can't be pepper spray because Chris just tanks it and moves on. It must have been first aid spray or something. Anyway, after apologizing, we found out Rebecca is the newest recruit on Star's team, having joined Bravo team just last month. Bravo's forced landing, and I'm assuming a few dog attacks, was apparently enough to make her panic and run straight into the mansion by herself without knowing what happened to her teammates. She's a little ashamed of that fact, but Chris tells her there was nothing she could have done. Damn right, he ran right into the mansion without his team too. Well, according to us anyway. She also mentions that the forced landing was kind of a strange occurrence since she personally maintained a helicopter before taking off. Apparently something went wrong with the engine, which is doubly weird considering that it wasn't even a long flight or anything. Before Chris heads out to search for his other team members, Rebecca suggests tagging along. Chris agrees. Chris, you weren't that far along from your team when you entered the mansion, right?
Yeah, why?
Okay, I'm not calling you stupid or anything, but couldn't you just have waited for them in the main hall?
Well, yeah, we're totally gonna do that now.
Chris and Rebecca return to the lobby, and there's no one to be found. Well, let's try the front door. They could still be out there. The hell? What was that, an animatronic? Chris manages to make his way over to the mansion's bar. Damn, this place got a built-in bar too? Very nice. After finding a sheet of music, Chris for some reason felt possessed to start messing with the piano despite not being able to read music or play it very well. I don't think this was a good judgment call, given that you're missing your entire team and the mansion is swarming with enemies of an undead nature, but what do I know? I'm not former military. Luckily, the noises only attract Rebecca.
It's me, Chris. Is that you, Rebecca?
Rebecca recognizes the sheet music as the Moon Knight Sonata and begins to play. She's better than Chris at any rate. Rebecca is fucking awesome. Pete Chambers. She's clearly rusty and offers to stay behind to polish out, and Chris leaves her to it. You ever think about how completely overpowered the dogs would be without the ability to stun lock them with the handgun?
A little while after Chris and Rebecca leave the main lobby, the rest of the Alpha team finally shows up. Barry, Commander Wesker, and of course Jill. Don't ask the obvious question about why it took them so long to enter the mansion if they were supposedly right behind Chris. That just creates plot holes, right?
What a mansion!
Captain Wesker, where's Chris?
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But Chris is...
What is it?
What is it? Dude, you're a cop. Anyway, Wesker sends Jill to check out a gunshot they heard, and Barry tags along for backup. In the dining room, they stumble upon a pool of blood.
What? What is this?
What is it?
What is it? Dude, you served in the military. Barry stays behind to study the blood because he needs more confirmation that it is indeed a pool of blood. And Jill goes to find some more clues. She doesn't need to search very long to find a pretty big one as she encounters a zombie for the first time in this legendary cutscene. Scared shitless, she retreats back to the dining room where Barry handles the situation. Because this is the 90s and Jill did not like the ability to girl boss her way through encounters yet.
The future, kinda?
Bitch can't even swim.
Back to 1998.
Jill manages to take a peek at what the zombie was eating, and it was Bravo team member Kenneth, who is a shadow of his former self, and they decide to go report their findings to Wesker.
Wesker!
Who also turns out to be just as missing as Chris. After a quick little search session, Wesker can't be found. Barry, who went to the Fred Jones School of Exploring Spooky Shit, decides to split up, but they do agree to use the main hall as a meetup area if things get dicey. He gives her a lock pick, and just like that, Jill's left to her own devices.
Listen, if something happens, let's meet up in this hall. This time I'll be there.
You see how high Jill's pants are? She don't need no man. Jill immediately shows that she does indeed need a man when she walks into a random room that's booby-trapped with one of those slow-moving ceiling crushers. It takes a while for her to notice.
Hey, what's going on?
Luckily, Barry is there to keep the door open, but not before an awkward amount of small talk for the amount of danger she's actually in.
Oh, Barry!
Damn, that's 2 saves in like 30 minutes. One more like that and Barry could probably get a bite of Jill's sandwich if he wanted. After a little more exploring, Jill and Barry meet up on the second floor of the main hall. They have this strange conversation. It feels canonical, like this is the first time they met back up after splitting up initially. So maybe the whole ceiling thing is after this. Barry then calls one of the only true zombie-free areas in the game dangerous and wants to secure an escape route. But before Jill can leave, Barry finds a really powerful weapon and decides to give it to Jill because
I have this.
I knew the game just started, but you could probably get a bite of my sandwich too at this point. Wait, the powerful weapon is just some acid bazooka rounds? Gee, thanks a lot. Kitchen's closed, Barry. A little ways ahead, Jill makes her way to the terrace and we find Forrest, pecked to death by crows. Bravo team sucks. Ooh, a bazooka. After finding some random chemicals, Jill tosses it into a random fountain, killing some random mutant plant. After that, Jill finds Richard and sweet baby Jesus on a lifeboat. What happened to him?
Oh, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons.
Demons, huh? I guess there was that random plant.
What kind of demon attacked you?
It was a huge snake.
Oh, giant snake? Well, that's different. All exaggeration aside, with Richard fading fast, Jill now has to find antivenom in order to save his life. And maybe, just maybe, if there's time, stop by the kitchen for some nutmeg to make some Malcolm X tea. Jill manages to find the serum somehow and arrives back to Richard to administer the shot. But it turns out she was too late and Richard succumbs to the venom, but not before him handing her his radio. Huh, should've never stopped for that tea. Wait, what fucked him up so bad?
It was a huge snake.
Yeah, I'm not messing with that. This is a pretty big mansion. I'm sure there's a ton of other things to do outside of picking fights with giant snakes.
After a while, Chris returns to Rebecca, who manages to relearn that song that opens a secret door. They had no idea that door was gonna open. Why were they fucking around with that piano anyway? Moving on, shit, I guess we found Richard. Bravo team sucks. Oh, a huge snake. If the snake was that big, how did Richard survive long enough to leave the room and not die instantly? Chris defeats the snake by dancing around the box and fighting to fix camera angles. I don't know, man. Richard might have been a bit of a pussy. That thing wasn't all that tough. Oh, turns out Chris took a hit and was affected by some of the venom, which leaves Rebecca with the task of backtracking through the mansion to pick up some anti-venom. She manages to survive, making her way to the other side of the mansion with only a shitty handgun with 15 bullets. After giving it to Chris, she pieces out.
With Jill, she finds herself exploring the garden area, which after taking a lift down leads her to the guardhouse. The hell's a guardhouse? I'm not rich, okay? Well, whatever it is, there's a literal crap ton of keys to collect. And underneath the guardhouse is an underground lab, or is it a sewer? Well, whatever it is, they're keeping a whole family of sharks down here. And I would say it was intimidating or something, but just drain the water. The fish. Jill soldiers on until she comes face to face with the dreaded Plant 42. And I would say that this was intimidating, but it's a flower. So Plant 42 gets his stem kicked until it shrinks and seemingly dies. But it turns out to be a clever plan and springs back to life and grabs Jill. Before she can renege on her "it's a flower" comment, Barry just strolls in with a casual fucking flamethrower and starts going to work, saving Jill once again.
You saved me!
Yeah.
Oh man, Barry, the kitchen's back open. Barry suggests Jill returns to the other mansion to find more clues. On her way back, she meets up with Wesker.
Wesker!
Jill, so you're safe.
That's what I was going to say. Where on earth have you been?
What was that?
Where on earth have you been?
What?
Where on earth have you been?
One more time.
Where on earth have you been?
Was this a line flub or was she trying to put on an accent? Jill is half French and Japanese, so she was definitely trying to put on the accent, right? I tried finding some background on the actress Inez Paulson, but I got nothing, so who knows? Anyway, Wesker just tells Jill the same thing. Go back to the mansion to find some clues, and she goes on her merry way. Hitting back to the mansion, she now has to deal with these super annoying enemies called hunters. They're fast, do a crap ton of damage, and has this leaping move that I'm convinced has invincibility frames, but I'm not entirely sure because while the shooting is always handled by auto-aim, the first Resident Evil is still pretty dodgy when it comes to accuracy. The best part is that they replace all the basic zombies in the Spencer mansion, which is super fun by the way. So Jill has to deal with these assholes until Yawn, the huge snake that Chris messed up a while ago, slithers back for the rubber match. Well, it's not really a rubber match, he never fought Jill. Whatever, it's all fun for trying to combine these two stories. Anyway, Yawn's a major non-issue, because Jill has enough firepower to take down a small remote village single-handedly at this point. After dealing with him, Barry once again just casually walks in, breathing all that newly melted snake vapor to see what Jill found, which is a hole. And don't get me wrong, it's a really nice hole and all, but why is your first instinct to jump down there? There's no way that random hole made by a thrashy snake could possibly lead to progression. Luckily, Barry has a rope for the specific situation, and Joe jumps down to check it out. But the rope falls and Joe has to wait until he runs and find another one.
Hey, what's going on?
Now I've done it. Sorry, Jill. Wait. I'll go and get another rope.
Barry? Barry?
Hey! Are you there, Jill? Grab the rope!
Hey, what's going on?
Now I've done it.
What are you, hourly?
Sorry, Jill. Wait. I'll go and get another rope.
Where are you getting all the goddamn rope?
Oh no, what is that? It has to be pretty powerful and smart if it's using a doorknob. Here it comes. Oh, it's just a zombie. That was a lot of build up for nothing. Chris finds his way underground. Where underground? I don't know. What's more important is that he explores the area well enough to find his way back up to the normal mansion, and then travel all the way across the garden only to take a ladder to a completely different underground area. But something actually happens here, as we finally find Star's bravest, smartest, and strongest member.
Enrico!
Yeah? 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 Yeah?
Don't! Hell. Umbrella. Enrico!
Yeah?
Before Enrico was tragically struck down, he mentioned something about there being a turncoat within Stars. Chris couldn't care less about that, however. Well, he cared a little, but he truly wanted to get his hands on the person that took a great man from us all too soon. After messing around with some flamethrowers, dodging boulders and shit, Chris enters a hidden laboratory hidden under a fountain in the garden.
After Barry apologizes for dropping the ropes, giggity, he gives Jill a passcode and leaves. And although she spent more than enough time in that hole, Jill feels compelled to go down and give it a once-over. Turns out that the random hole did tie into progression as Jill travels through the underground where she fights a giant creepy spy. Oh, never mind. After that, Jill finds her way to a hidden laboratory as well. And it's here where Jill faces her toughest challenge yet: naked zombies. Push some stairs there, enter some passcodes here, and Jill finds herself deeper within the lab, where she meets back up with Barry, and they take the elevator up and find Wesker. Oh, hey, Matt. Oh, and two, Barry? If you thought you were getting any of this sandwich, Barry, then you can just forget it. Although Wesker is threatening his family. I'm torn.
I think you should stay away from Barry, Jill. I hear that his wife and 2 daughters will be in danger if he doesn't do everything I tell him to.
You are so cruel.
Well, you don't have to worry about anything, because you'll be free from this world very soon, Jill.
Why do you have to destroy Stars?
Yeah, applying for Stars is the only place that doesn't have a chin-up requirement. Apparently, this laboratory has been conducting experiments for quite some time, and a recent incident has caused an outbreak that affected the people and animals of the surrounding area. Except the hunters. Those assholes are experiments Wesker had to release, right? Anyway, Wesker was ordered by Umbrella to eliminate stars as to prevent the news of the outbreak from going public. Wesker plans to destroy the entire area and cover up everything.
I must complete my mission as ordered by Umbrella.
Why are you suddenly British?
Don't you find it strange that this is the only game that I'm not?
Wesker, you're a digital dummy. What? Barry, did you hear this?
That's it. I was going to make you Jill, queen of the biohazard, but you just sashed your way into a holding cell, little lady.
Sometime later, Chris enters the detention area where Jill is being held. She warns him that Wesker is a turncoat. Unfortunately, he can't free her right now because the door is electronically shut, so he promises he'll return for her. While waiting for the elevator, Rebecca meets back up with Chris and they take the lift together. We run into Wesker and he instantly tried to flip Chris to his side, but he refuses because Chris is a tough guy. But most importantly, it's revealed that Wesker was the one who shot Enrico back in the caves, probably because of his incriminating evidence against Umbrella.
Now, Chris, the two of you are going to follow me. I want to show you something.
You're not my supervisor!
Rebecca!
Of course not. Enrico told you to say that after the gym incident, didn't he? If it's any consolation, she truly was peak Chambers. Now walk, Chris.
Wesker and Chris goes into the lab and he reveals his prize experiment, the Tyrant. Chris, being a tough guy, is thoroughly not impressed.
Chris? Stop it.
Wesker, you're pitiful.
Damn, like, dude, he's no selling the fuck out of this reveal. After laughing the Tyrant off, Wesker really wants to prove how sick and badass it is by activating it. And once it's freed, he instantly turns his attention to Wesker and kills him.
You can't kill me!
Great!
The Tyrant fight is like any other fight in a game that isn't Yawn Round 2. Just run in circles, keeping the test tube between you two until you land enough magnum shots to put him down. Well, that was anticlimactic. I wonder what Rebecca thinks about all this. Wait, Rebecca? Turns out she survived because of her bulletproof jacket. On the way out the laboratory, Rebecca suggests that they should rig the place to blow, and Chris agrees. She runs off to do so while Chris goes to free Jill. With the gate unlocked, the two reunite.
Yeah. Hug her sandwich tight, Chris. Barry, what are you doing here? Come on, Chris. Does it really matter in this plot hole riddled version of the story?
On her way to the heliport, the game meets back up and a bunch of off-screen monsters appear, and Chris decides to stay behind with Barry and Rebecca to hold them off while they wait for the rescue chopper. Jill alone proceeds to the heliport. Once there, Jill finds a flare and launches it to get Brad's attention, but before he can land, the Tyrant busts through the floor and charges at her. Unlike almost everything else in this game, Tyrant figures out how to work his knees and actually runs at you. He can maul you up pretty quickly, so seriously, try to keep your distance, and after firing enough shots, Brad shall throw down his redemption rocket launcher, grab it, aim, and fire.
Yeah?
It's coming! Jill! Kill that monster! You're our Amazon, Jill!
So that was our slapdash version of the combined events of Resident Evil. Let's wrap up the video by taking a look at the gameplay. Look, there's quite literally a metric crap ton of videos covering this game. So if you're looking for some in-depth breakdown of the gameplay, then it isn't going to be found here. You know what this game is, and so do we. But here's our quick thoughts anyway.
Being a survival horror, a lot of the game revolves around exploring spooky areas, searching for keys, emblems, and other random junk, and honestly, the original Resident Evil does a pretty solid job of that. Of course, I can't be too harsh since this is the first game in the series, but exploration is still handled relatively well. There's no compass to be found here, which is always going to be a massive pet peeve of mine no matter how old the game is, but areas like the Spencer Mansion, the garden, guardhouse, that weird underground kitchen, and the lab are all well designed enough that you won't get lost for too long, even if you aren't paying full attention. The only area I truly didn't enjoy was the cave. That place screams of PS1 crunch. The textures all blur together and I felt myself wandering in circles, but hey, I guess that's kind of the point. It's a cave. The big, scary tank controls that Capcom and some players swear can never work in the modern day actually hold up pretty well here. The game age doesn't really get in the way of anything. Obviously, the controls exist to accommodate for the fixed camera angles, and if I had one real complaint, it would be that turning can feel way too wide at times. That doesn't exactly help when you're trying to outrun something to avoid damage. It's got me killed once or twice, but honestly, coming back to it, they weren't as stiff as I remembered. Of course, there's lots of rubbing your whole body on surfaces to get somewhere, but that's the cost of beauty. The main loop is exploration here, and really the entire survival horror genre, but especially the Resident Evil series. It's basically find blank, smash blank, end the blank to make blank happen, if that make any sense. It's not always a strict pattern either. Sometimes you find a key that unlocks a door that leads to another key, or maybe you pick up an item that helps you reach a boss and the boss drops a key. Or you can beat a boss, find a key, use that key to unlock a puzzle, and surprise, it's another key. It usually continues like that until you grab a rocket launcher and fire at the bioweapon of the week. And speaking of puzzles, there aren't a lot of them in the original Resident Evil, at least not in the traditional sense. I guess it depends on what you consider a puzzle, and that probably might vary from person to person. Some might think that whole find a key to unlock a door and get another key loop is a puzzle. Others, like me, think of puzzles as a specific isolated challenge, and on that front, Resident Evil doesn't have a ton. Most of them involve you pushing something, a box here, a statue there, those portable stairs that get their 15 minutes of fame twice. There's a few that ask you to put things in certain orders or to do some light math, but nothing too complex. It's very classic Tomb Raider in that way when it's all said and done.
Combat is probably the second most important element of the game, because let's be real, without it there wouldn't be much survival in this survival horror. There really isn't a lot that goes into it either. The core is massively simple, just point, shoot, and let the auto aim handle the rest. The enemies you'll be fighting are pretty ho-hum too. Early on you'll be pumping bullets into the usual zombies and dogs, and by the time you revisit the Spencer Mansion, they'll be replaced by the much stronger hunters for the rest of the game until you reach the final lab. There are a couple of special enemy types thrown in, but they don't get much screen time and are usually easy to avoid. Crows can be cheesed by accidentally re-entering a room to reset them, spiders outside of the boss battle can be sprinted past, and right near the end these guys called Chimera shows up, and they're annoying as hell, but then again you can just run past them and pray you don't take too much damage. I wish the game tried to make enemies a little more aggressive to force you to consider combat, but I get it, that's not the point. The main challenge of combat comes from deciding whether you should even engage in it at all. Ammo and resources are scarce, and you're never given enough tools to just completely clear an area of enemies. Since most of them take several shots to go down outside of using power weapons, you really have to think about what's worth using your limited ammo on. It's a balancing act. Maybe it's best to use your weapons to clear out a hallway that you travel through often, just to make it safer. But if you go that route, you'll end up being more vulnerable in other areas since you'll probably have to sprint past enemies and risk slipping up and taking damage. The only time the game absolutely forces you to fight is during the boss battles, and since they don't come with that interesting risk versus reward mindset, I can wholeheartedly say that they're some of the worst parts of the game. There's just nothing really special about them. Sure, they can take more punishment than a regular enemy, but it's not like they're bullet sponges or anything. Any damage you take will probably come down to fucking around with the controls in the actual fight itself, since they're not exactly designed for quick dodges or fancy movements. Sure, you can damage list the bosses, but you know, skill issue. Every boss battle ends up playing out the same way, at least for us. Pull out your strongest weapon and take damage until either they give up the ghost or you do. That being said, I don't hate them. They make for solid breaks from the main gameplay loop. The last thing we'll touch on is the two playable campaigns, Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield. Obviously, as we stated in the top of the video, both stories are ultimately non-canonical to the overall timeline. What is consistent though is that Star's Alpha team makes their way to the Arklay Mountains to locate the missing Bravo team and to continue on with their mission. They're ambushed, forced into a mansion by dogs, and from there, Jill, Chris, Rebecca, Barry, and Brad make it out. Those are the only real agreed upon 100% true events. Everything else is basically a hodgepodge of both Jill and Chris's individual scenarios, stitched together to make one semi-coherent story. A semi-coherent story we foolishly tried to fit together. Most people see these two campaigns as easy and hard mode, but I never really thought of it that way. Jill comes with a bigger inventory, a wider array of weaponry, and a simpler way to get around thanks to the lockpick. But she also takes more damage, leaving less room for mistakes. Chris, on the other hand, can take more hits and moves generally faster than Jill, making him a bit more forgiving to play as. However, he carries fewer items, navigation a bit more complicated with the small keys, and he takes a little more effort to obtain his stronger weapons. That means you'll be dealing with enemies using weaker firepower, which really enforces the fight or flight mindset even more. The two of them aren't so much easy or hard, they're just two different ways to experience the same 32-bit nightmare.
All joking aside, I am completely shocked by how well the original Resident Evil holds up. I suppose it kinda has to, since the genre, while gotten more advanced over the years, really doesn't stray too far from this core formula. I am not gonna sit here and say that the game offers the same scares it did when we were kids. Obviously that's impossible, but what has stood the test of time is the atmosphere. It amazes me how it still managed to maintain this faint feeling of dread throughout, and that's really a testament to how effective this title was when it first released all those years ago. Even with the silly voice acting that honestly isn't that bad in certain spots. Resident Evil on PlayStation is always going to be an absolute gem, one that I'll always recommend. But of course, this is only the first part of the trilogy, so join us next time when we watch the virus spill over an entire city in Resident Evil 2. We'll see you next time.